sort of galloped through Moses' life, from the high points, the low points, the in-between points. And I asked you to be thinking about what kind of lessons we might be able to learn from Moses. Because I'm convinced more and more over the years that this just isn't a book for us to carry around or leave on our counter, or even to read. It should be in every instance something we can learn from, positive or negative. You know, I had a lot of teachers in my years. When I taught school, there were some things I knew not to do because Mr. or Miss so-and-so had done it, or things I wanted to do because they had done it. So sometimes we learn positive and negative lessons. We're going to be looking at some of these, but the first thing I have is what stood out for you, what possible lessons stood out to you from Moses' story? Anybody have anything you thought, wow, I don't want to do that, or wow, I'm glad I do that, or wow, he shouldn't have done that? Any lessons?
I kind of like how you broke it down into kind of 3 sections of life, because I feel like mine and probably many others is like that, and it sort of helps to know you can kind of group it together as one lesson type or one experience type and kind of go on. Yeah, he was interesting.
Yeah, if you look at your own life, think about, you know, let's just pick a number of 60. Think about what you were doing the first 20 years. Don't tell me. And then those next 20 years. And then the most recent 20 years. And a lot of us, I think, do have a pattern similar to Moses in that way. What pattern?
I don't need to think about some of them years.
Okay. Yeah. But you know, the more I talk to some folks I know, I won't name any of them, I had a boring youth, childhood, early life. You know, I'm thinking, man, where was I during all that stuff? I don't know where I was, being a little Catholic Christian, whatever. But anyhow, what else? Anybody else pick up anything last week that struck them or they remember talking about, thinking about? All right, well then let's look at some of these lessons from Moses. Pass it around. We're not going to be reading all these big long passages, so don't fall asleep yet. It's going to kind of be hitting some of the high points. And Kathy, if you have any outline or questions or whatever you want folks to think about for next week, if you'll get those to me, I'll have them on Sunday, put them on Sunday.
Okay, I do have a little something, but it's real, you don't need to think about it in advance. We're not exactly going to delve heavy, but we're going to learn some cool stuff that we're going to apply for today. It'll be fun.
All right. Don't you love my little blanky blanks, blanks?
Mm-hmm.
When God chooses a leader. Now that was most of that first few chapters of the book of Exodus when, you know, Moses, I don't think Moses woke up one morning and thought, oh, I'm going to set my people free. I mean, for a long time, he didn't even claim those to be his people. And then things happened. Miraculous things happened. But I love some of this came from a Bible I have that's called the Leadership Bible by John Maxwell. A lot of the notes and things. It's just a really good way to study leadership. And you don't have to look these up. We're not going to find the verses for them. This is based on what we learned some last week. When God chooses a leader, God gives the leader blank investment in the work. What kind of investment do you think Moses had in what God called him to do? He didn't have a monetary involvement, because by the time he started leading people, he was poor like everybody else. What kind of investment might he have had? Maybe think about an emotional investment. Because, you know, I'm convinced whether it's church or work or home life, if you don't have a heart connection, you don't get nearly into it as much as you do if you have a heart connection. So he had an emotional attachment, emotional investment, especially when he found out they were his people, when he saw how they were being treated. That's when he got involved in things. When God chooses a leader, he affirms the leader through other people. Other people. One of the people that we didn't talk about a lot last week is Jethro, his father-in-law, who really called him to task on a few things. We'll look at some of those. I believe that if you're called to something, I don't mean just big earth-shaking things, but if you're called to be involved in something, and you share with some people that you trust, hopefully they'll have the gumption to tell you that's crazy, don't do that. Or they'll say, yeah, I think you could do that. I think you could do that. I think you'd be good at that. So Moses had to have that encouragement also. God also gives the leaders what? What do you need when you're coming brand new into a job or brand new into a role in the church?
Like a tool or training.
I was gonna say have your head examined, but yeah. God gives us mentors. People who we can talk to. Can you think who might have been a mentor to Moses? You've already mentioned one guy. Jethro was a mentor. And the other one would be Aaron. Because remember, Aaron had been in this Jewish life the whole time. Moses kind of came in late, and Aaron often helped him to understand. And then God will also build on one's what? Builds on, you're coming into a leadership position. You don't come in empty-handed. When you come into any kind of job, what do you bring with you?
I feel like you have to have some confidence in yourself.
Okay. You also bring whatever experience you've had. There's so many things in church that because you knew about it in the work life or in your school life or somewhere, you're 2 steps ahead on that. Also, we bring in our strengths and our weaknesses. Our strengths. And that's what's so important, I think, in the life of a church, is to find out what somebody's strength is and help direct them in that path. Because none of us have it all, but everyone has something. We also bring our background. That can be a positive or a negative. What kind of background did Moses have that might have helped him?
Well, he was a prince of Egypt. I'd say some leadership went with that.
He had some leadership training in that. He also, this isn't any of the blanks, I'm just kind of riffing off that. He also had some visionary experience. You know, again, if you've seen the movies, you know, they didn't just suddenly go, oh, put a pyramid up here and put a statue up here. There's lots of planning going along with that. He also brought in some negative background. Because he had been raised all his life to think, what about the Jewish, the Hebrew people there? What had he been raised to think about?
They were lesser.
They were lesser. They were slaves. So, you know, sometimes you have to shake off that background, especially in faith communities. You know, there's so many people that will never come into a church because of that church, blah, blah, blah. Or one church, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes you have to get over yourself, get beyond yourself. Again, when God chooses a leader, he refines the leader's character in, what did Moses do for 40 years? He wandered around in the wilderness, not with the people yet, but in obscurity. Sometimes we have to realize the leadership skills, what we have in the quiet times. Somebody who's always out front talking all the time and telling you all this and telling you all that, you want to say, stop and think about that for a minute. Just stop and think. God also brings alongside those who can compensate for our weaknesses. Our weaknesses. What did Aaron bring to the table to help Moses? Do you remember when Moses tried to tell God why he can't do something?
He was a good speaker.
Yeah, he gave him Aaron to be his spokesperson for that. He also gave him Joshua, who comes up later in the story, who was one of the generals that fought a lot of the battles they had to go through. So don't ever think if you're in a position of helping or doing something that you have to do it all. When you realize there's something you can't do, find somebody who can. Like work on a telephone. If you can't do it, find somebody who knows how to do it. I especially like with the computer stuff around here. You know, I'm semi-illiterate on that, but I know to go to Kelly and Sandra real quick and say, I'm forever going to the office on Thursday, bless her heart, and I'll say, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. So we can, it's not a bad thing to admit weakness. The bad thing is to know you have a weak spot and not get somebody to help you. Let's look at Exodus chapter 14. I'm not gonna read all 28 of these verses, but this is a time when Moses is telling the story about how this all got started, what's happening, what's going on, and it's when the people are starting to grumble. I love the line in verse 11. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt you brought us out to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Think about where they've just come at this point. They've come through the Red Sea, and they say, "Was there enough graves there? Why didn't we ask you not to bring us out?" That's not what happened. You know that happens sometimes. We make a decision, and then some people go, "Why did you do that? Well, shouldn't we have done this? Why couldn't we have done that?" So he's got some people grumbling here, which I think is just so cool.
Much like real grumbling is cool.
Well, I think it shows how much people are like people down through the ages.
Yeah.
Sometimes God will do something really great for us, and the first little chink in the armor, we're like, "God, why'd you do that? Why'd you bring me back to Roanoke? Why did you, why did you get me to go to seminary? Why did you get me to get on the board?" So these people are just like we are. And Moses stands firm. "Don't be afraid. Stand firm. You'll see the deliverance. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." And the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand into the sea. Divide the water so your Israelites can go through the sea on dry land." Again, I just really enjoy the characters in the story. Because you've got the people grumbling. You've got Moses saying, "Just chill. Just chill." But evidently he talked to God about it, and God heard the grumbling, and God says, "What is wrong? Just tell them to shut up and keep moving." That's Catherine's translation. Shut up and get moving. So in this little section, if we read all the way through 28, a leader, Moses, projected blank instead of blanks. Let's look at 14:13, just to be clear. That's where I read, "Moses answered the people, 'Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you'll see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you today. The Egyptians will see today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you need only to be still.'" So Moses is projecting blank instead of blank. He's projecting calm instead of chaos, craziness, grumbling. It's really hard as a leader to stay calm when people are all up in arms. Whenever I read this passage, I always think about the day after the shooting here in Roanoke, almost 20 years ago. I was in Floyd. My Aunt Catherine had died, and I got a phone call. I guess I have a cell phone. I don't remember, but I guess I did. I got a phone call from Dale Weddle. He said, "Pastor, you have to get back here right now." And I said, "I'm in Floyd." He said, "Well, people are out in the street. They're going crazy. You got to get back here." Out on Kirk Avenue. I don't know if you remember that craziness that day. And I said, "Well, I don't have a clergy shirt." I felt like I needed that, authority. He said, "What size? I'll go to the bookstore and get one. They'll be here for you." But what helped us through that time, not just me, but other people, stayed calm. And that's why we didn't have some minor riots and all that kind of stuff, because there were cooler heads that stayed calm. So Moses is trying to keep the people calm. And instead of cowardice, he projects confidence. He didn't say, "Maybe God will get us through this. Maybe it'll be okay one day." He has that confidence. God's going to do it. There are times in our life when we have to stand on the truth, the truth, the truth. Stand on God's track record, especially when things get a bit crazy. 14:15. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." He projected clarity instead of confusion. Clarity instead of confusion. Can you think about a time in your life or in your work life or here at church even when things are just really confused and upsetting and what in the world? And if you can have just one person Speak some clearness to it. Bring it back into focus. That can make such a difference. And then 21 to 22, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. Again, Moses was projecting confidence. He didn't get to the edge of that water and go, are you sure, God? Are you sure? He knew that this was going to happen because God said it would. And instead of mumbling and being clumsy about it, you say, well, not all of us are in leadership here. Yeah, you are. There are people that look to each and every one of you in certain ways to see your reaction, to see how you deal with things. I was telling Sandra the other night, I'm glad I don't sit up on the stage anymore because I don't have as good a filter as I used to have. And when somebody says something really stupid or hits a wrong note, I'm real likely now to go, but at least I'm on the front pew so not many people can see it. But again, how we deal with conflict, how we deal with change. I see you all as some of the real linchpins to the future of this church. And how we react to it is going to say a lot to the other folks. So if you're looking at chapter 18, which I forgot to put in that line, here you got Jethro, a priest of Midian. We don't know what faith walk that was. We don't know if it was Hebrew or not. But Jethro was his father-in-law. And he begins to hear about what all God's doing. What God is doing through and with and around Moses. Look at verse 5. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wives, came to him in the desert where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and then went on into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they had met along the way and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the land of the Egyptians. He said, praise be to the Lord who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, no Pharaoh. Because at this point, Moses had already met Zipporah, his wife. He'd already been out in the wilderness with Jethro helping, and that's when the burning bush, and he has to go back to Egypt. Who knew if he'd make it back? 12, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, what is this you're doing for these people? Why did you alone sit as a judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening? Moses said, because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and laws. Now remember again, how big a crew did we say probably came out of Egypt with Moses? Maybe as much as 1 million people. And 1 million people, how many people are going to have disputes and arguments? And they're going to come to Moses because he's the one they think, and he thinks the only one that can settle things. Did you get that? He's standing around with these, griping people from morning to evening. What would that do to your personality, to your spirit? It would be ugly. I feel sorry for Zipporah when he'd go home at night, Moses' father-in-law replied, what you're doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You can't handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to Him. Teach them the decrees and laws, and show them the way to live and the duties they're to perform. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. You know, this always reminds me how Jesus had the folks sit down for the feeding of the 5,000. He had them in groups. Why would Jethro be telling him to divide these people up into thousands, hundreds, tens, and so on?
More manageable.
More manageable. More people could get taken care of. Fewer people left to feed off other people's gripes and complaints. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all the people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. I don't know why that hit me funny there at the end. It's like, here this man has just been really, honest with him, and it seems to be working. It's kind of like, okay, Dad, you've done enough now, just going home. I got it from here. So look back at this in your Bible. Look at verse 19. What changes with Moses in verse 19? If I have the right chapter or not. One of the things that happens after this with Moses is, after this encounter with Jethro, Moses begins to be a person of prayer. He begins to seek God's direction on this. And he becomes committed to communication. If he had not communicated effectively with the people about this new government, this new organization, what would have happened? If he had explained to the people what was going to be going on, what would have happened?
They get upset because they can't come to the top.
Can't come to the boss. I get tickled. This friend I mentioned who's having surgery, her wife was texting me and she said, if we call you on Friday, will you pray with us? And then she very quickly said, now I know you'll say we have a pastor here, but, but we want your prayer. He also then in verse, Jethro laid out a vision for him, an understanding, and a development plan. This shows me that when a church is doing things, we need to have a plan, because without a vision, the people perish. He also didn't select just anybody. He didn't go through and say, okay, every 10th person is going to be a judge. What kind of people did he pick?
Able-bodied men.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this time it was just men. Able-bodied men, trustworthy men. And again, in this huge crowd, I'm wondering, how did he know these particular people? Hopefully he had someone who could help him to select people. It's kind of like, electing a board of directors. And then he, after he had picked them and trained them, then what did he do? He released them to do their work. Now, I'm sorry, I don't think I have as much Jethro in me as Moses, because I think I'd want to be kind of listening every now and then. Make sure they were doing it right. And that's one of the downsides of being a leader, is knowing when to keep your hands in your pockets and step back. And after this, what was the outcome, the best result for Moses?
He'll be able to have peace himself
Mm-hmm.
and endure all of this mess.
Mm-hmm. Because, honey, we're just in Exodus 19. We got a whole bunch more miles and wilderness to cover. And he would be able to stay strengthened for himself. And What was it that Jethro said he should be doing, other than just not hearing all the disputes? What was Moses' job supposed to be, in Jethro's opinion? Hmm?
The hard cases?
Hear the hard cases,
Communication with God.
communication with God. It's really interesting because again, we don't know a whole lot about Jethro, where he came from. You must be, I think I'm in verse 19, you must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them the decrees and laws and show them the way to live and the duties they're to perform. It's basically saying you are to be their God connection. You're to show them what it means to follow God. And if you're always taking care of the petty stuff, you don't have time to do that. You don't have the energy to do that. You don't have the want to do that. That's why when there's a problem, I call Pat or Sherry, Kelly, Paula, and say, well, that's not working. Or, there's certain things I can fix myself. I don't have to fix a little flapper, but not only this, not only is it gives me the time to do what I need to do, but I don't know how to do a lot of those things. And the worst thing you can do is have somebody try to fix something they don't know what they're fixing, because then you end up with a bigger mess. So I think it's important to see in this one that Moses had to be open to the mentorship of his father-in-law, Jethro. Every time I say that, I think of Jethro Bodine, but had to be open to the understanding and trusting Jethro that Jethro knew what message God was giving him to give to him. And that takes time to build that kind of trust. If somebody came in a first-time visitor, and they came up to me after a church and said, now, I think it'd be better if you did this and this and this and this. What's my reaction going to be to them? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? But if somebody who's been in our church and understands the ministry and the purpose of our church comes up and says, I think it'd be better if we considered, I always try to say what people consider thinking about. We consider, I'd be much more likely to listen to that. Or somebody who I trusted. There's crazy people in every church. Present company accepted, of course. But, some people will come up. One woman in California told me that I needed to go to school and get a degree and a licensure in counseling, and then I could charge for counseling, because what I was doing as a pastor just wasn't making me any money. Well, if you go into ministry, you're not going into it for the money. You're not going to the money. So again, learn who you can trust. Learn whose counsel you'll listen to. Because all of us are going to come up on times when we just don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. So, a couple more things. Turn over to Numbers. That's after Leviticus. Thank God we're not going through all the rules of Leviticus. The same person that called me about prayer, we were going through the Bible, and we were talking about how they had to put up the tabernacle and take down the tabernacle every time they moved. And finally one day she said, Catherine, you know why they were so grumbling and gripey and complaining all the time? They had to take all that down and put it up every time. Why couldn't they just have a solid meeting place? Anyhow, so Numbers 20 verses 8 to 12. We talked about this a little bit last week. Start with verse 6. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance of the tent of the meeting and fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring the water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. That all-important word, but the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I will give them. Do you have any reaction to that reaction of God?
It seems rough after all they went through to say that thing is gonna keep you from going.
And I've always pretty much thought of it with that whack whack was what got him in trouble. But there's so much more to this little passage. It was more than just hitting the rock twice. First of all, he kind of takes credit in God's place. He says, must we take care of you? It wasn't them that had taken care of him for all this time, it was God. And then he disobeyed God by not speaking to the rock. Sometimes we have to learn God does things differently at different times. What's always worked, we've always done it that way, may not be what needs to be done. So first of all, he takes the place of God, must we. Then he disobeys and not speaking to the rock. And then he loses his temper. You don't see Moses stand there and going, well, I'm tired of having to take care of you all, and I'm just going to take care of this now and get you some water, whack, whack. I see some fire and spit and vinegar in all this when he's saying it. So it wasn't merely that he struck it twice. He also used a harsh term for the Hebrews. He doesn't call them children, he doesn't call them brothers and sisters. What's he call them?
Rebels.
Rebels. Rebels. Now, sometimes it's good to be a rebel, okay? But when your leader is looking at you and calling you rebels, that's not a complimentary term, right? He also, according to God, didn't trust God to do what God said God would do. See, it's more than just hitting that rock twice. More than just hitting that rock twice. And he wasn't open to God doing it a new way. I'm sure he's walking out, he's got these people griping and complaining about no water. He's already irritated. Saying, God, this is what you did before, so I'm sure that's what you meant to say. Whack, whack. Instead of realizing that God was going to do something new and different. New and different. Does that broaden the story a little bit for you there? To realize it wasn't just hitting the rock twice? When we do something not pleasing to God, it's not like Flip Wilson used to say, the devil made me do it. That just doesn't cut it. Because actions don't happen like that. First, you have to think about it. Now, this may happen real quickly, but you have to think about it. You kind of have to count the consequences, the cost, and then you just do it. If I were to get irritated before this was over tonight, and I'd walk up to Lisa and just pull back and whack her. Okay? I've never hit anybody in my life, so you're okay. It wouldn't be just me suddenly thinking, oh, she's got a blue whack. I'd have to think about it. Again, it can happen real quickly. I have to think, sure, it'll beat me up.
I'd be laughing too hard.
But you follow what I'm saying? How with Moses, like the rest of us, when we do things that are displeasing to God and displeasing to ourselves and other people, it doesn't just happen. All along those steps, we have the ability to say, wait, stop. Even as Moses felt himself getting all angry and irritated, and I don't know why Aaron didn't speak up to it and say, whoa, brother. Just talk. But it happened. And God couldn't ignore it. It wasn't like they went around the corner to this rock over here and did all this, and then there was water. He was doing it in front of whom?
The rebels.
Everybody, the whole assembly. So, as we finish up about Moses, look about where he was buried. Deuteronomy, chapter 34. But yeah, I still think it comes across a bit harsh. After all Moses had been through, all the times he had to listen to God, that was just the last straw. You want to read part of chapter 34? It's only got 12 verses.
Gene does.
I can't even say half those words.
No,
Lord. Moses climbed from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, the peak of Pisgah, facing Jericho. God showed him all the land from Gilead to Dan, all Naphtali, Ephraim, and Manasseh, all Judah, reaching to the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and plains which encircle Jericho, city of palms as far south as Zor. Then and there God said to him, "This is the land I promised to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. With the words I will give it to your descendants. I've let you see it with your own eyes. There it is, but you're not going to go in."
Okay?
Moses died. Oh, stop.
Stop right there.
Okay.
Can't let him die quite the second yet. And by the way, now I know who can read the Pentecost, all those things. I got it covered. There's a phrase in here that gets lost for us. At the end of verse 4, it says, "I've let you see it with your own eyes. There it is." In the Hebrew law and life at that time, land became yours when you saw it. You may later have to do some paperwork about it, but you didn't buy stuff you hadn't seen. And so that was kind of a way of saying, you're not going in, but this was the reward. The reward that I promised to your forefathers and foremothers years and years ago, which was a lot kinder than saying, stay on this side of the mountain, you're not going over there, you die. He at least let him see it. Moses died there in the land of Moab. Moses, the servant of God, just as God said. God buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. No one knows his burial site to this very day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyesight was sharp, and he was still walking with a spring in his steps. The people of Israel wept for Moses in the plain of Moab 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses came to an end. Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. The people of Israel listened obediently to him and did the same as when God commanded Moses. No prophet has risen since in Israel like Moses, whom God knew face to face. Never since has there been anything like the signs and miracle wonders that God sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh, and to all his servants, and to all his land. Nothing to compare with the all-powerful hand of his and all the great and terrible things Moses did, as every eye in Israel watched. Great and terrible. So where is he buried?
Valley in the land of Moab.
But we don't know exactly where.
No.
If you go on your computer to find a grave, that website, you can't find where Moses was buried. Now, there's a lot of thought into why that was. Here they're on the precipice, going here into the promised land. What if they had buried Moses in a specific place with a great memorial? They take the 12 stones and lay them around everywhere. Why would that not be a good thing?
People would vandalize it.
People might vandalize it. Some of the people over here in the promised land, because they loved Moses so much, they might have been tempted to go back and live there, or at least visit there, when they had a whole lot left to do in the promised land. I think about that, I've always thought I wouldn't want a marker of any kind when I die. But I've got several friends who died, and they're not markers. A box of ashes somewhere. And sometimes I wish I had that place to go to. Instead, I go to places that were special to me and that person. But they didn't want to make it a memorial so that people would not be tempted to step back, to go back. It also shows us here how well God knew Moses. It said he knew him face to face. Very few people knew God face to face, but Moses had. It also says he had intimate knowledge of him. And then, does he say, and I'm really sorry you screwed up, but he was kind of pretty much a good guy. Is that what it says? It says there was no one else like him. No one else like him. That's why through the ages, Moses is still esteemed as such a leader. There's a story with Jesus in the Mount of Transfiguration. And they look up and they see Jesus and there are two other guys standing there. One's Moses, one's Elijah. So that, I didn't say story, but his reputation and his message and his methods traveled on all those years. So what part of Moses' life do you like the best? Which part do you like the worst? Which part would you like to have been standing with him? Which time would you have been, and we haven't hit all the story. You wouldn't want to have been there when it happened. Any or all of those? There's one story where they got really rebellious and God opened the ground and everybody who came out of Egypt died. And they started with what the next generation was. I don't really want to have been there.
I liked his patience. Even though he dealt with all of that crap, he still had patience for 40 years. Not here.
We won't be calling you Moses then.
Well, no, you'd be wasting your
One of
breath.
the parts of the story we didn't read was when they were crossing the Red Sea. And Moses, you've seen the movie, he's got his staff up. And he's waiting for 1 million people to get across that dry patch. And his hands start to falter. Do you know what happened?
Water start coming back?
No. Backwash. No, God led 2 people to come and hold his arms up. God sent people to support him, to hold him up. I love that. Oh, let's get a little money here, let's walk faster. You know? So that was kind of a quick walk through Moses' life. Next week, Kevin will be talking to you about Revelation. And then the next week, we'll look at the story of Ruth. Ruth is more than just where you go, I'll go, your people be my people. More to it than that.
Are you not gonna be here? Or
I'll be here.
just ask. I didn't know.
I just don't like to keep her away.
Oh,
And that's why I have other people that I can call on to do that, right? Any last minute prayer requests or praises? Oh, may God be with us as we go forth, that we can trust you and love you more. I thank you for the prayer last night when Reverend Todd said, God, we thank you for your friendship and your love. In your name we pray.
amen.
Amen.